Sir Patrick Stewart had faced Klingons, Borg, mutinies in deep space, and the crushing weight of Shakespearean tragedy, but nothing, it seemed, quite prepared him for the bright, buzzing chaos of a British daytime talk show studio. The loose women's set gleamed under rows of unforgiving lights. The pastel couches, the polished floor, the oversized mugs with slogans printed in cheerful fonts, everything radiated warmth. Yet beneath that carefully curated friendliness, tension already simmered. Patrick adjusted the cuff of his jacket as he waited off camera. At 84, he still carried himself with unmistakable authority. His back was straight, his eyes sharp, his presence unmistakable. Years on stage and screen had taught him composure, but also honesty. And honesty, he knew, was dangerous in places built on soundbites. A production assistant leaned in. "Sir Patrick, we're live in 30 seconds. He nodded once. "Thank you." From his position, he could hear the panel warming up. Laughter echoed, high, familiar, a little sharp around the edges. Denise Welch's voice stood out easily, confident and animated, already mid-anecdote. Patrick exhaled slowly. He respected Denise. He truly did. But he also knew her reputation, unfiltered, fearless, and unapologetic. The red light blinked on. "And we're back," the host announced brightly. "Joining us today is the legendary Sir Patrick Stewart, actor, activist, and one of Britain's most celebrated performers." Applause erupted as Patrick walked onto the set. He smiled, waving lightly, and took his seat. Denise turned toward him with a wide grin. "Patrick Stewart," she said, leaning forward. "What a treat. I must say, you don't age, you just evolve." Patrick chuckled politely. "That's very kind. I suspect good lighting has much to do with it." The audience laughed. The exchange was warm, easy. For the first few minutes, everything flowed smoothly. They discussed his career, Star Trek, X-Men, the Royal Shakespeare Company. Patrick spoke thoughtfully, his voice calm but firm, his words carefully chosen. Then the conversation shifted. "And Patrick," Denise said, tilting her head, "you've been very vocal recently about so-called cancel culture in the arts. Some people say you're out of touch, that younger generations are simply holding powerful figures accountable. What do you say to that?" Patrick paused. He felt it, that subtle tightening in the air. This wasn't a casual question. "I believe accountability is essential," he replied evenly. "But I also believe we are losing something precious when fear replaces dialogue. Art must challenge, provoke, even offend at times, otherwise it becomes decoration." Denise's smile faded, just slightly. "But surely," she countered, "there's a difference between challenging art and harmful speech. People from marginalized communities are saying, we've had enough. Isn't it time to listen rather than defend old structures?" Patrick leaned forward now, his hands resting on his knees. "I have listened," he said. "For decades. I grew up in a violent household. I know what harm looks like. But silencing conversation, especially through public shaming, does not heal. It divides." The audience murmured. A few nods. A few frowns. Denise crossed her arms. "With respect, Patrick, that sounds like privilege talking. You had a voice. Many people didn't." The word privilege landed hard. Patrick's expression changed, not angry, but resolute. "With respect," he replied, "reducing complex lives to single labels is precisely the problem. My childhood was not privileged. My mother suffered profoundly. I spent years unlearning violence. I earned my voice through work, reflection, and responsibility, not entitlement." A hush fell over the studio. The host attempted to interject. "Perhaps we—" "No, I'm genuinely curious," Denise interrupted, her tone sharper now. "Because when famous men talk about being silenced, it often feels like they're upset about losing power, not fairness." Patrick straightened. "I am not afraid of losing power," he said quietly. "I am afraid of losing nuance. We are building a culture where disagreement is treated as moral failure. That is dangerous." Denise shook her head. "Or maybe it's just uncomfortable for people who've never been told no before." A ripple of tension spread across the panel. Cameras zoomed in. The producers, behind the glass, exchanged anxious glances. Patrick inhaled slowly. Years ago, he might have deflected with humor. Today, he chose honesty. "I've been told no my entire life," he said. "By casting directors. By class barriers. By an abusive father who told me I would never be anything. What concerns me now is not being told. No, it's being told, you are irredeemable. Denise leaned forward, eyes blazing. Some actions are irredeemable, Patrick. And who decides that? He asked. A mob. A headline. A trending hashtag. The audience gasped softly. The host raised her hands. Okay, let's take a breath. But Denise wasn't backing down. You're sounding like you're defending people who've done real harm. Patrick's voice remained calm, but something steely had entered it. I am defending the idea that justice requires due process, compassion, and the possibility of growth. Without that, we become what we claim to oppose. Silence. For a split second, no one spoke. Then Denise laughed, short, incredulous. Oh come on. That's a very comfortable position when consequences don't land on you. Patrick looked directly at her. They do land on me, he said. Every time I speak up for survivors of domestic violence. Every time I challenge powerful institutions. But I refuse to believe that tearing people apart publicly is the same as progress. The host tried again. We're nearly out of time. Denise turned to the camera. I think viewers can see exactly what's going on here. Patrick followed her gaze, addressing the audience at home. I hope they see a conversation worth having, he said. Not one worth ending. A producer's voice crackled in the host's earpiece. Her face tightened. Well, she said stiffly, we're going to pause there. Patrick blinked. Pause. The lights dimmed slightly. The applause sign stayed dark. Denise leaned back, arms folded, jaw set. From off-camera, a stage manager hurried forward. Sir Patrick, he whispered urgently, we're going to escort you off set for now. Patrick stared at him. I beg your pardon. There's been a decision, the man said, eyes flicking nervously toward the control room. The audience buzzed with confusion. Patrick rose slowly, dignity intact but disbelief clear on his face. So this, he said quietly, is how conversation ends now. Denise said nothing. As Patrick was guided toward the exit, whispers filled the studio. Phones were already out. Social media, he knew, was igniting in real time. At the edge of the stage, he paused and turned back once more. I came here in good faith, he said. I leave disappointed, but not surprised. Then he walked off. Behind him, the cameras cut to a wide shot. The host forced a smile. And, we'll be right back. But Britain already knew. Something had gone very wrong. And the real fallout had only just begun. The moment Sir Patrick Stewart stepped into the quiet corridor behind the Loose Women's studio, the noise hit him, not sound, but vibration. Phones buzzing, notifications exploding, the modern echo of outrage. A young runner hovered awkwardly nearby. I'm sorry, sir, she said softly. This wasn't supposed to happen. Patrick gave her a gentle smile. These things rarely are. Inside the control room, panic reigned. Producers spoke over one another, debating edits, damage control, and statements. But it was already too late. Clips of the exchange, carefully cropped, selectively captioned, were racing across X, Instagram, and TikTok. Patrick Stewart defends cancel culture critics. Denise Welch shuts down out-of-touch actor. Legend exposed on live TV. The internet had chosen sides within minutes. Patrick sat alone in the green room, coat folded neatly beside him. He stared at his reflection in the mirror, not the famous face the world knew, but the boy from Murfield who once hid behind books to escape shouting and fists. He had survived worse than headlines. Still, this hurt. His phone rang. His agent. Patrick, she said breathlessly, we've got a situation. I imagined as much. They're saying you were removed for disruptive behavior. ITV is preparing a statement. Patrick closed his eyes briefly. Disruptive, he repeated. For speaking calmly. Denise has already tweeted, the agent continued. She says you were condescending and dismissive of lived experiences. Patrick exhaled slowly. Did she? Yes. And the hashtag Loose Women Clash is trending. So is hashtag Team Denise. And the other side? He asked. A pause. Well, his agent said carefully, hashtag Stand with Patrick is climbing fast. Patrick ended the call and leaned back. He had never chased public approval. But what unsettled him was the speed, the violence, with which nuance vanished. Across the city, Denise Welch sat in her dressing room, scrolling furiously. Her jaw tightened with every comment. Queen Denise crown. Finally someone said it. About time these old men were challenged. But then came the others. Let the man speak. He was calm. You weren't. Why kick him off for disagreement? Denise tossed the phone onto the table. They're twisting it, she snapped to a producer. He was undermining real pain. The producer hesitated. Some viewers think, maybe it escalated. Denise's eyes flashed. So now I'm the villain. No. Just, people are asking questions. Denise crossed her arms. For years, she had been praised for her honesty. Now that same sharpness felt exposed under a microscope. Meanwhile, Patrick returned home. By evening, international media had picked up the story. American outlets ran headlines next to images of Captain Picard looking stern and disappointed. His doorbell rang. His wife, Sunny, answered it. A young journalist stood outside. Sir Patrick, do you have a comment on? Patrick gently closed the door. Not tonight, he said. That night, he slept poorly. Memories resurfaced, of his mother's silence, of how shouting always replaced listening. By morning, he knew something was required. Silence, this time, would be mistaken for guilt. He sat at his desk and began to write. Not a tweet, not a rebuttal, a letter. By midday, Patrick Stewart posted a statement, calm, measured, unmistakably his voice. I did not attend loose women to win an argument. I attended to engage in conversation. Disagreement is not violence. Dialogue is not dismissal. I believe in accountability, compassion, and the possibility of growth, for all of us. If that belief is now considered disruptive, then I will accept that label with clarity and conscience intact. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The post was shared hundreds of thousands of times. Actors, writers, academics, and activists weighed in. Some disagreed respectfully. Others praised his restraint. One comment went viral. He didn't shout. He didn't insult. He didn't walk out. So why was he removed? ITV released their statement that afternoon. Sir Patrick Stewart was asked to leave following a breakdown in the tone of discussion. We aim to maintain a respectful environment for all voices. The phrase, all voices, was dissected mercilessly online. Then something unexpected happened. A former loose women guest, a domestic abuse survivor, posted her own video. I don't agree with everything Patrick Stewart said, she admitted. But I saw a man trying to talk about healing, not erasure. Kicking him off felt wrong. The video gained traction. Pressure mounted. Denise watched the tide shift. She wasn't used to being on this side of it. Her manager urged her to clarify. You should post something softer, he suggested. Acknowledge complexity. Denise hesitated. Softness had never been her brand. But the next morning, she woke to a headline. Was Patrick Stewart silenced for being calm? That stung. She finally issued a statement. I stand by my passion on the show. But perhaps the conversation moved too fast and too far. These topics are emotional, and emotions run high. Noticeably absent was an apology. Patrick read it quietly. He felt no triumph, only sadness. This had never been about winning. Days later, an invitation arrived. Oxford Union. Motion. Has cancel culture replaced conversation? Patrick accepted. The debate sold out instantly. On the night of the event, the hall buzzed with anticipation. Students packed the aisles. Cameras rolled. Patrick stood at the podium, hands steady. I was recently asked to leave a television program, he began. A ripple of laughter followed. Not for shouting, not for cruelty, but for refusing to simplify a complex truth. He spoke of art, accountability, and empathy. He spoke of listening, not to defeat, but to understand. He spoke of his mother, of violence, of learning that anger without compassion changes nothing. When he finished, the hall rose in a standing ovation. Not because everyone agreed, but because everyone felt heard. The clip circulated worldwide. Even Denise watched it, alone, late at night. She paused the video, staring at the screen. For the first time, she wondered, not if she'd been wrong to speak, but if she'd been wrong to stop someone else from finishing. The scandal faded, as scandals always do. But something remained. A shift. Producers became more cautious about silencing disagreement. Viewers began asking harder questions, not just who was speaking, but how. And Patrick Stewart. He returned to the stage weeks later, delivering Shakespeare to a full house. As he spoke the final lines, his voice rang clear and unbroken. The audience listened, not because he was powerful, not because he was famous, But because he had insisted, quietly, firmly, that conversation still mattered.